And now, without much more further ado, I'm going to put the focus on Dr. Bera of the Sacramento 7th District Congressman, who is also the Vice Chair of the Science, Space, and Technology Committee of the House. Correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
I was 4 years old 50 years ago, so I can't say that I vividly remember the space program, but I grew up in Downey, California, which was home of Rockwell International, which was at the heart of the Apollo mission. So a lot of my friends growing up, their moms and dads worked at Rockwell. And, you know, if you just think about, you know, what the Apollo program meant for the United States of America, as well as the entire world, just the excitement. You know, it is early in the morning out here in Sacramento, but I remember my mom and dad getting me and my two older brothers up early in the morning, staying up late at night to watch those launches, and it just captivated our imagination. And what we need to remind ourselves is when President Kennedy challenged us to go to the moon, we had no idea how we were going to do it. We didn't, you know, we had to imagine that we could do it, and then we had to go out there and solve these issues and create that. And when we look at the challenges that face the world today, whether that's climate change, you know, overpopulation, you know, food insecurity, water insecurity, we've got to find that same initiative to say, okay, we don't know how we're going to address these challenges, but if we set that goal, we can solve any issue. And when it comes to space travel, you know, whether that's returning to the moon, creating a permanent base on the moon, whether that's using that as a way station to go to Mars by 2033, you know, let's set that goal. What's beautiful in the 21st century is it won't be a United States goal. It'll be the world working together. It'll also be the public sector working with the commercial space industry. And, you know, I think that is a remarkable thing. You're also seeing, you know, if you think about the Apollo program, you know, NASA was the launch vehicle, it was the lunar landing vehicle, it was the science mission. Well, today you can go out there and say, okay, well, you know, we'll do Blue Origins or SpaceX. So you have various launch vehicles. You know, India is gonna launch a lunar lander, I believe tomorrow, and you know, so you have different lunar landing vehicles. So then we can focus on the science mission, and then you see these small startups. There's a company that I had a chance to go visit, Made in Space, which is testing 3D printers on the space station, because what they're thinking is, you know, instead of all the payload that you would have to take up with you to build something on the moon, well, could you not just take moon dust, use the raw materials that are on the moon, and use that to create the building blocks to build a space station? So it's pretty remarkable what you can do. So this is an exciting time, you know, and again, the lunar landing 50 years ago was not just a U.S. mission. It was a remarkable achievement for the entire world. So, okay, great. I'm happy to take a couple questions. And I can't speak any Hindi, but I can say namaste.
Namaste.
So,
that's a good one.
Okay.
Namaste, sir.
So I've got time for a couple questions before I.
So I've told folks how to get there. On the bottom of your screen, there's a Q&A button. You click on that Q&A button, and you should be able to type in a question. So in the meantime, we're going to go around the room real quickly and see if other people here or any of your panelists, you can turn your mic on and ask a question. So,
or I can keep talking.
Why don't you start?
Keep talking. Okay. So one question that we get asked a lot in Congress is, you know, what would it take us to return to the moon and have a permanent station on the moon? It's going to take a sustained effort. What was remarkable about the Apollo mission was it wasn't Democratic or Republican. You know, it spanned both Democratic and Republican administration, and there was a sustained effort and a sustained goal. And we've got to get back to that. You can't change every 4 or 8 years. So again, if our goal is to get to Mars by 2033, let's set that goal. Let's provide the funding and the resources. And then let's create the context where the international community can work together to try to get to that goal. We have no idea how we would go to Mars and come back, but you know, if you think about the Curiosity mission and so forth, it's pretty remarkable what we can do if we put our minds to it. And I think that's what we hope to accomplish in Congress, but also in the international community. There's other questions that come up. You know, everyone's thinking about going to the lunar poles where we know there's water. The thought there is that you could turn that water into fuel. You know, obviously to break Earth's atmosphere consumes a lot of energy and a lot of fuel, but if you could use, you know, this is too simplistic, but if you thought about the moon as a gas station, well, you could get up there, refuel, and then you could head on to Mars. We've got to address issues like property rights. Who actually owns that lunar ice? I would argue that it's all of us as humanity. It's not one country or another, but when you have commercial space entities that are thinking about, okay, well, we're going to go there, we're going to build the facilities to turn that ice into fuel, well, they're going to invest a lot of resources. So that's something that we ought to think about. When you have different countries that are trying to go there, again, who owns the moon? When you have companies that are thinking about asteroid mining for rare minerals, well, who owns those resources and elements? Again, those are things that we ought to be discussing as the global community. And again, I would hope that we come to a consensus that it belongs to all of us as humanity. And, you know, an accomplishment of one country is an accomplishment of all of us as all of the globe and humanity. So, you know, it's an exciting time. I am optimistic. I think if we really do want to go to Mars and we set that as a goal, then we can accomplish that.
Really great comments there. And I think probably the one that really hit me front and center was when you said returning to the moon permanently and sustainably. And the secret is that term, sustained.
Right.
Because, and yes, it was a joint effort by both Republicans and Democrats. I mean, Nixon was literally the president when Armstrong first stepped foot on the moon. And Kennedy, they're both different parties. Kennedy's the one that started the ball rolling in the first place towards that. So it's wonderful to be thinking about the fact that this should be and can be a bipartisan effort to get to the moon permanently and sustainably. Now that's going to take, in my opinion, not just the United States, but other countries of the world working in cooperation with one another. It's going to take what we now call new space, as opposed to the derogatory term dinosaur space. And that is to say the new young thinking people that are doing things differently, that are doing things uniquely. SpaceX's ability to take rockets and use them over and over is a prime example of that. And so I just love that statement, buddy. And that's not really so much a question as a monologue, but I thought you nailed it. I thought you nailed it.
Yeah, it is sustained effort that's not Democratic or Republican, and it's not just a U.S. effort, it's the international community working together, the public sector working with the private sector. If you think about the International Space Station, what that means it's a remarkable achievement, and perhaps space is what brings us together as a nation.
Anybody else got a question? Okay.
Yeah, Ami, do you hear me?
I can, yeah.
Okay, so let me first say that most of that litany of all that great stuff you were just talking about, I just want to reassure you, people have been studying this stuff for years. I was one of those. I'm 12 years older than you are. I worked at Rockwell International way back in the day in LA. I studied, I was on the first President Bush's, worked on his space exploration initiative, where we, worked all different concepts to get to the moon and Mars. That was Rockwell. Martin was doing it, Boeing was doing it, and, the big companies. So we've studied these things. These things are well studied. All of the property rights issues, those kind of things, those are being studied pretty hard right now also. And the group that you're addressing right now, the National Space Society, is, of course, a leader in all those areas. We're very, we're at the forefront of all that stuff. So, yeah, we're going to make it happen. And the private sector, that's the exciting thing for us right now, is finally we're moving out of the era of government kind of oversight and all these things, government leadership, and it's still a challenge though to ease NASA out of where of how we're going to get there But I think in the next few years, we're going to see NASA turn over a lot of the leadership, a lot more of the leadership to the private sector, because there are some very exciting things happening in the private sector that you're probably aware of, and NASA is currently kind of ignoring some of it, but I don't think they're going to be able to ignore it for long. But we're studying things.
I was going to say I agree with you, and I think allowing the private sector to come in, create that free market competition is going to also dramatically lower the cost, as opposed to whether it's just federally funded. And again, the other caveat there is the international community and creating that context where we're all working together towards a common goal.
So I have a question online. This is from Brian Solenzel. I'm sorry if I just hashed your name. Solenzel. Do you think space technologies should be perfected on Earth communities before implemented sustainably in space?
So I'll just repeat the question from Brian. Do we think space technologies need to be perfected on Earth before they're implemented in space? Yes and no. I mean, I certainly think part of the reason for having a permanent base on the moon is it allows you to do different types of experimentation, just as the International Space Station allows us to perfect technology up in space. And again, the example I used was 3D printing. We know how to do it here on Earth. That company I talked about, Made in Space, is testing things in a zero gravity environment because it's a little bit different. So I think we've got to do a little bit of both. Well, I can take one or two more questions, and then I'm probably going to sneak out.
Okay, so that's fine. If we are to use Pierre Dutray, if we are to use water as the fuel in outer space, why are we not using water as a fuel here on Earth? I would also like to ask if you believe that the resources of space should be owned by everyone. Why do we believe we not addressing the United Nations? Oh, why should we not be addressing the United Nations more formally, as the technology is required to take us to space, benefit the people here on Earth as we develop them?
Right. So I agree with that. But this is my personal opinion, that we've got to come to consensus as an international community that the resources out there in the heavens belong to all of us. They shouldn't be one country's or another country's. And much as you come to a treaty through the United States in the South Pole and Antarctica, I think we've got to do the same thing. That may require Congress to take the leadership role, but we certainly are trying to push Congress to address some of those issues. And yeah, I think it's perfectly reasonable for us to think about how we turn water into fuel. Part of what's, and we could do that here on Earth, where they're testing the technology, turning water into hydrogen. But part of it is, again, if you think about the water that's both on Mars as well as on the moon, you potentially get to the moon, turn that water into hydrogen, turn it into fuel, and then use that to then launch to Mars. Again, on Mars, again, yeah, I think the evidence is that there's water on Mars. You can take that water for the refuel and use that for your return flight home. So again, this is all imagination, but that's what this takes. We've got to imagine that we can do this, and then let's go out and do it.
So, one more quick question. This one was, well, when I saw it there, not gone away.
Okay.
All right.
Well,
Oh, there it is. From Avinash. Ami, how do you look at India's space program?
I think India's space program is pretty remarkable. So in a fairly short period of time, they've created, I've had a chance to visit ISRO in Bangalore. Some of the science that they're working with, I visited the company that was competing in the Lunar X Prize. The fact that India is about to be able to do a lunar landing, that is remarkable for such a young program. And what's beautiful about space is it captivates the imagination of a generation. If I think, I'm a doctor by training, but you created a whole generation of engineers and scientists who grew up watching the space race. And we ought to do the same thing for our kids in the next generation. Captivate their imagination, encourage them to imagine and believe that they can do anything that's possible. And again, the 50 years after the moon landing, it is still a remarkable achievement for all of humanity. So thank you for allowing me to take a couple minutes this morning for being part of the National Space Society and the International Space Society. And again, believe that all things are possible if you just put your mind to it.
Thank you, Ami.
Thank
very
you
much, and I love that last statement.
Great. Have a great day. Be well.
Okay. So what we're going to do now is we're going to go to Ron Jones. Are you there, Ron?
Yeah, keep Ami there. I want to talk to him some more.
Oh, he wanted to. You might want to stick around. Donna.
Yes.
I need to talk.
Excuse me.
Would you for just a few more minutes? Can you stick around?
Okay.
Because what Ron is going to be talking about, and I'm actually going to share a screen here with my computer, and I'm going to show you this document called HJ Res 59. I don't know if you're familiar with this, but Ron is going to be speaking about this joint resolution that I believe has gone through the House. I'm not sure.
It's been introduced.
It's being introduced.
Yeah.
So, okay, and I think he just wanted to have a few questions about that. So, Ron, I'm going to stop my share. If you want to start your share, you can. And then you can ask whatever you want. Ami does have to leave. So.
Okay, well, first of all, it's very refreshing to hear someone in Congress speak with the authority and knowledge that you have on this topic. It's you obviously have studied up on this as a National Space Society folks, as we are. It's great. And you probably know some of our folks in DC. I don't know, actually, I'm not sure who you know. We've been spending a lot of time on the Hill. We've got a full-time lobbyist now and a bunch of part-time lobbyists. And I know you are one of the supporters of our bill, Resolution 59. And so thank you very much. You probably know that we've been working through Kendra Horn's office. We were really pleased to find out that she was an International Space University graduate. That kind of made our task a lot easier talking to her. And so she's
Kendra's a great chair of the Space Subcommittee.
Yeah, she's fantastic, and she's helped get your support, and I think we've got over 21 supporters in the House that I know of right now, and we're working the Senate right now. But since I got 10 minutes here, let me start.
So Ami can take off, right?
Well, not if you doesn't want to hear the whole story.
Although
one of our guys, Randy Gigante, is probably listening in. He'll probably next time he goes into DC. I've asked him to set up a meeting with you on our bill. And
That sounds great. And, you know,
okay.
what's beautiful about the National Space Society is it's citizen lobbying,
yeah.
right? And that is how democracy ought to work, for citizens being able to lobby their members of Congress. And so I'll look forward to that meeting.
We're going to
Thank
find
you.
you. All right. Thank you.
Okay, you will.
And then I'll take the mic. All right, thanks, Tommy.